Okay, welcome everyone today for coming. I just wanted to speak to kind of the importance of the opportunity that us students are getting right now. As you can see, there's only a select few of us here. And to myself, I'm very honored that I got to meet Governor Brad Little today. And I just want to say to really relish in the importance that we're getting to speak with someone who controls so much of what happens in our schools here in Idaho. And as you seniors know, he's worked very hard on creating the launch program and being able to kind of help us aid in going to college post-high school. So I just want to introduce our Governor, Brad Little.
So am I doing, Lily, am I doing Q&A first, or do you want me to do my remarks?
Oh, Governor, you're just talking to the students right now.
Okay, all right. Hi, students.
So is this on? Is this working? Okay.
Not very well.
Not very well. I am Charity Egland. I'm the advisor for the Bengals PER, and I just wanted to give you some context for who these students are and where they've come from. In 1927, the Bengals PER published its first edition, and it's been in continuous publication ever since then, led by students. And in the process of doing that for 96 years, students in Lewiston have created an ongoing in-depth chronicle of local history. So they're firecrackers, they're brilliant and bold and professional, and they have questions for you. Our first, is this working? It is. Okay, it is for them. Okay, our first question is from Jarek Edwardson.
Hi, Jared.
So first, could you explain what House Bill 710 is?
Well, of course, the House bills are numbered by when they were introduced, but that was that was this year's library bill, which was significantly different than last year's library bill, which I vetoed and only held my veto by one vote last year. And when a bill becomes a law by the Constitution, I have three options. I can sign it, I can veto it, and when I veto it, I have to send a transmittal letter, or I can let it become law without my signature. And I don't do that very often, though I did this year, one bill. Last year when I vetoed it, I pointed out what I thought were the biggest problems with it. The fact that the fine was so onerous, that there was no definition of what was deemed as pornography or inappropriate. This legislation was the second bill this year. It was a follow-up. It put in code the Miller test, which is a recognized test of what is pornography, which, as you can imagine, is hard to define. It lowered the fine from $2,500 to $250, and it gave libraries 60 days to act on it. So it is not perfect, but it is way better, and it actually addressed all of my concerns that I addressed a year ago when I vetoed the previous bill.
And then second follow-up question, we spoke to some of our librarians here at the high school, and they wanted to ask you, how do you vision an adults-only section in a public school library?
Well, that's up to the library. All you have to do is say it's an adults-only area, and most, the Lewiston School District is, pretty significant. I was really concerned about small libraries where they don't have a place to go. An adults-only section is going to be available here, but I think more importantly is what goes in that section. What was in the other bill was almost anybody's guess. Now there's a statutory definition. Now there's going to be arguments about it. There's no question about it. And we will see what happens when this becomes law. But the Miller test is a pretty rigorous test. If it's arts, if it's humanities, if it's science, it isn't anything in there that is graphic in any nature doesn't qualify as in we will see, but it was so much better than the previous legislation. So.
All right, thank you, Governor.
Next, we have Josh Tatko with questions about legislation regarding gender definitions and pronouns. And
Sure. So in the interest of time, I'll focus on House Bill 538, which has been characterized as an opposition to compelled speech. It disallows public educational institutions from forcing teachers and other staff to use a student's preferred name and pronouns. And for the most part, the bill does cover that, but I'd like to focus on Section 2, Part 3A, I believe, which states that not only are they not required to use their preferred name and pronouns, but they're not allowed to, period, without parental consent at least. So my question would be, who is that meant to protect? Because it still compels the speech of teachers and harms transgender and other gender nonconforming youth.
My interpretation when I signed that piece of legislation is it basically said you couldn't compel an educator to use the pronoun. And I'm sorry I don't have the bill memorized by subpart, but for the most part, it was basically saying that a school district couldn't compel a teacher, but that doesn't mean that the administration can't give direction and guidance. It was state law that said that there would be a defense for a teacher that felt that they were being overridden by the school district. That was my understanding of it. I'm sorry, I don't know. I look at about 700 pieces of legislation a year, and I don't remember the subparts of all of them. So, but that was my interpretation. Is it was basically said that a school district could not compel a staff member to use, and you know, this is there's still litigation going on nationwide in many aspects of this, and we will see. But I didn't see it as being that onerous. So.
Sure. My point is that is the main thrust of the bill, and most of it is referring to the anti-compelled speech for teachers. But I was mostly concerned about that one part that specifically stated that public, educational employees, shall not use the student's preferred name or pronouns that don't align with sex without parental consent. My
understanding was they couldn't be compelled to. That was my understanding, and I'd have to go back and look at it because that was when I scrutinized the bill before I signed it. It was an issue of somebody in the administration compelling a teacher to use, and of course the issue is their preferred name, and then how do you qualify preferred? That was, as I remember the bill, that's what it said. But I'll have to go back and look at that subpart. So.
Thank you.
And now Paxton Lotta has questions about Idaho schools' sex education programs.
So both the Idaho's Defense of Life Act and the Parents' Right in Medical Decisions Act could largely prevent teens from seeking
medical treatment. You have to stand up so I can hear you better.
Sorry.
I'm not the TV camera, so the microphone isn't helping me one bit. So.
Both the Idaho's Defense of Life Act and the Parents' Rights and Medical Decisions Act could largely prevent teens from seeking medical treatment concerning pregnancy. Studies by government agencies and acclaimed universities show a strong correlation between reduced teen pregnancy and comprehensive sex education. Instead of punishing teens for unintended consequences of sex, these programs equip them to understand and prevent the situations that could lead to pregnancy. Would you consider making comprehensive sex ed available in Idaho schools?
Say your last statement, because I think that was the punchline.
Would you consider making comprehensive sexual education available in Idaho schools?
Well, that is the jurisdiction of the trustees and the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education, and school districts have an abundance of flexibility about what they do and where they go down. I think one of the bills you referred to is a trigger law, and I don't remember how the trigger law impacts a curriculum, which is what you're talking about.
I was saying, what I was saying was that if teens are educated about the decisions they're making, which is what comprehensive sexual education allows them to be, reduced teen pregnancy rates will be observed. So then it would call for less action on the part of abortion like laws. And
Oh, okay,
jurisdictions.
I see your nexus. I see how you, in a circular reference, got to where you're talking about. Obviously, some of this is what's in the suggested curriculum in the health field, which is what sex education was traditionally, and mandating curriculum in that area is part of the issue. And Mr. Hanson could probably help me out, but I think the guidance to the districts is they have flexibility. There's certain things they can and cannot do, and obviously anything related to abortion as birth control is one of them that is now not available. So, and I would probably hazard a guess that most people in Idaho don't think that abortion should be aligned as a method of birth control. So.
Thank you.
Just two more questions. We have Danica Keene with questions about the potential ban on TikTok.
Oh boy.
Hi, so I was just wondering on what your opinion is on the TikTok ban and how do you think it'll affect us and our safety?
When you say us, I assume you're talking about students, citizens, the public at large. Well, I did do an executive order that state agencies, given the risk by every single national security agency with a responsibility in this area, that it couldn't be used by my state agencies. So, and there were a few of them that had a quasi good reason because of who utilizes TikTok. Right now, that is going to actually, it was passed by the House and Senate, and because it was part of that larger bill, I believe the president signed it, but there's a period of time in which the owners of TikTok, which are basically a subsidiary of a Chinese government-controlled entity, have to sell it, and I think that's what everybody thinks may happen. So I'm not a fan on the Chinese government having access, given how they act over there. The fact that everybody on the street is scanned with face recognition, and you're, in essence, I know from having traveled there before, you're in essence under scrutiny by the Chinese government all the time, and I firmly believe that most people in Idaho don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Our last student question is from Ella Brooke.
Hello. My question is just, what advice do you have to graduates?
Work hard, get a good education, that there's not a knowledgeable person that doesn't think that the skills needed for today's high school graduates are higher than what they've ever been before in the history of this country and this state. And so that's the beauty of this facility, and the one right down the road is that whether it be career technical or whether it's get your degree at LCSC, you're going to have more skills. The world is just more complicated. You can go down to the sawmill, you can go to the paper plant, you can go to any one of the facilities around here, particularly Schweitzer Engineering, where the amount of skills they have to have for their workforce is much higher. My ultimate goal in life is for you all to have the best possible option to want to stay here in Idaho. You want to get a good education. You want to have abundant job opportunities. You want to have the lightest hand of government on the regulatory environment. You want to have good roads. You want to have good water and sewer systems. You want to have great opportunities for outdoor recreation. Those are the things that I've been investing in, particularly in the public school area, that we have good schools, because as you get older and start thinking about having a family, you'll want to have good schools for your children going forward. That's what I'm focused on. But you've got to have a better education so you can have a higher income to where you can plan to retire comfortably. That's my goal, so.
All right, thank you.
All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Hanson. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hanson.
Yes. Well, Governor Little, thank you for the opportunity. I wanted the opportunity for our students to get an exclusive with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. We're going to head into you guys get to ask the questions now. But from an introduction standpoint, just real quickly, Governor Little is a friend of education. He's invested millions of dollars in early childhood literacy, and that, I can tell you, is paying dividends in the Lewiston School District and around the state. So for that, we're very appreciative. And he also sees the other end when he developed opportunities for launch and to get our students into high-demand jobs. So we very much appreciate that. He's also 1976 grad of the University of Idaho. That's very important.
I was supposed to graduate in 76. I actually graduated in 77. So
Okay.
don't make my resume look any better than it really is.
I really was focused on the University of Idaho is where I was focused on. He's also a man of the people. This might be a rumor or not, but you can concur this. When Garth Brooks was doing his tour, or his stadium tour, I heard that the governor reached out to Garth and said, would you add a day because these tickets sold so quickly?
Yeah,
Confirm?
Garth and I talk all the time.
Okay, there you go. So he's a man of the people, and he looks out for the people of Idaho. So I appreciate you being here for that, and I know that you want to go ahead with your remarks. And thank you for being the Diatley Center, and this is a multi-trip. The governor also was our main speaker when we cut the ribbon for this beautiful facility here.
Well, thank you, Lance. Let me go backwards on what you said a little bit. When I went to school at the University of Idaho, I think the tuition was like $175 a semester. And I had a lot of classmates that basically, if they had a good job, could make enough money to pay for their room and board and get their degree. That is not the case today, or has not been the case. The cost of a higher education has unfortunately got out of reach of too many students. With the advanced opportunities, which allows you at either that building or this building to get, in some instances, up to an associate's degree and a big head start on a four-year degree, that is $3,800 per student. Is that what it is now, Lance? Is 38?
Like a little over four.
A little over $4,000, which we didn't have 7 or 8 years ago. And then with launch, which is $8,000, we're in essence investing available $12,000 in every student. That has done more than anything we've done in the last 40 years to get the cost of education affordable for a large swath of students that didn't get a great scholarship, don't have the good fortune that they have a family member that will help them out. And I really think it's going to move the needle. It's going to increase enrollment here at LCSC. It's going to increase the attention in this facility, which is where you can go to high school and get started to get skilled up to where you can go to work at Outdoor Vista or Schweitzer or somewhere else and make a higher wage to begin with and then continue your education at LC. It is going to be a game changer. Our go-on rate, which we want to have higher in Idaho, is only about 37%. I believe that with those two things going forward, we're going to get our go-on rate north of 50, and we hope to get it up to 60. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier. It's going to make it to where our Idaho kids are going to have the best opportunity to stay here in Idaho and to have a successful career here in Idaho and comfortably retire. All right, Eric.
Me first?
Yep.
So tell me about the library bill. You signed it this year.
Weren't you here with this? Hell, the Lewiston Tribune cannot do justice to what the questions we got here.
I heard some great ones, but I didn't hear the library.
Well, they,
Repeat it for me.
okay.
So it's somewhat different, but not a lot different.
Well,
when you beat
it was a lot different in when I vetoed the bill, and only sustained my veto by one vote, I might add. But I told the bill sponsors that they said, we're going to have a library bill. I said, well, you're the legislature, that's your priority. Right. But I said the what really bothered me, or two things that bothered me, was the bounty system to where people could go around and put particularly small libraries out of business with a $2,500 civil fine, or the lack of definition about what's pornography, what should not be available. This bill addressed both those things. It moved the fine down to $250, gives the library 60 days to move a book to a certain area. And one of the questions, it was a good question, is what do you do about in a high school library, about what do you do about in books that aren't that don't pass the Miller test? I believe, and Senator Schroeder, who actually worked on, there was one bill that failed, but his bill implemented the Miller test, which is a much higher hurdle for somebody to get over to say, I want that book out of the school. So I said, I told you I would sign it if you address those three things. You didn't address them totally, but you made it a lot more livable. This bill will pass. We'll see what happens. I know there's already interests that have notified libraries that I've got a problem with this book, I got a problem with this book, I got a problem with this book. But the Miller test is a high hurdle to get over. So it's still going to be a pain for the libraries. There's no question about it. And I'm not very excited about that. But I think it's going to give the public comfort. And there were stories that were told on the House and Senate floor about all this sensitive material that was available in the children's sections in libraries. And I don't believe anybody in Idaho thinks that's a good idea.
The voucher bill didn't pass this year, but I think maybe sponsors similarly told you the library bill is going to be back. Maybe they're telling you the voucher bill is going to be back. Looking forward to 25. What do you think of the prospects of that? And
Well, of course, the voucher bill, there have been multiple, and the issue is really, do we take precious general fund money and make it available for others, for schools that don't have to comply with the same criteria that Mr. Hansen has to do here with the Lewiston School District. That there's accountability, that there's transparency, that there's awareness in it. That's my issue. In our Constitution, we have a constitutional obligation to provide a free uniform system of free public schools. I am absolutely a full advocate of that. But and we spend about 52% of all the tax money that your parents pay goes into public schools, as it should be. But if we all of a sudden start diluting that, as has happened in some other states, and there's almost as many different takes on it as there are other states, but some other states it's gotten to be a huge burden for the state. And if you have a burden for the state, if 50% of your money goes to public education, you got a burden for the rest of public education. So those are my criteria. In choice in Idaho, we are ranked by a lot of pretty conservative groups as having some of the best choice options there are. There's nothing to say that you can't walk out of the Lewiston School District, other than distance, and go to Orofino or Moscow or Cottonwood or wherever that might be. Many, many states don't allow you to do that. We've done that in Idaho. We've done it for a while. Now we've made it to where you are not bound by your zip code, by your address of what school. That's the first part of school choice, and the most important part. We've got a very robust charter school system in Idaho, and this year we made it even more robust by giving, basically saying, if you're a charter school and you're doing great, continue. The charter schools that aren't meeting the grade, we're going to focus on them and make it available for them. We still don't give them property taxes, but we do allow them to bond if they've got a credit rating. So we're working on charter schools. We've got home schools. We got magnet schools. We've got all these other options. And so my long answer to your short question is I have to make the case to the legislature and to the public that if you want school choice, you've got it here in Idaho. And there may be, and we've got empowering parents where there's money that's available. So to go from, I've been to these other states. I've been to states where these urban cores, these schools are absolutely a disaster. Kids are stuck in these schools, and that's where the big voucher program came from. I've been to Memphis, I've been to Baltimore, I've been to Denver. I've been to these school districts to where these kids were stuck and they were non-performing school districts, and they needed a way out, and that's where a lot of the voucher came from. We don't have that in Idaho. I'm very proud of our public. It's not perfect, but we're making great advancements, and we will continue to do that. So, yes, sir.
There are like one or two things that might have the most impact on folks' like daily life that you might be able to go into a bit from this most recent session?
Well, my highest priority was launch. We actually started it a year ago last September. We got the authorizing language done in the last legislative session, and this year I had the heavy work of getting the appropriation through. We put 80 million available. 5 of that 80 million went into career technical around the state. The other 75 was available, and as I stated earlier, changing the percentage of kids that are going to have an opportunity to have a better career, a better life path, I think is and it's not going to be perfect because it's a brand new program. But we thought we were going to have 7,000 kids sign up. We got 14,000 right now. 1 out of 10 high school seniors raised their hand and said, I want to be in the healthcare field. That's one of the biggest issues I have when I meet with doctors, hospitals, my veterans' homes, behavioral health areas. They all need more help in the healthcare. And of course, Elsie's got a great healthcare and nursing college right here. They're going to have a lot of people sign up. So I think educational opportunity for kids, which is number one, but I also think workforce for the community is the bigger thing. Obviously, we put a lot more money into roads and bridges. The bridge at Lenore is going to get finally fixed. They would never have been able to do that if I wouldn't have put state money into local roads to pay for the bridge up at Lenore. Roads, bridges, schools, water, all of those things, but far and away, and this year we did do the career ladder again. This year we did fund launch. So I was very pleased to see that in this school district, Mr. Hansen has an 86% retention of teachers. That was not the case when I first got this job. The delta between what a teacher got paid in Lewiston and Clarkston was too big, and it was hard to keep teachers. And increasing starting teacher pay, the career ladder, and the health insurance all made it to where hopefully some of these students that are the best and brightest are going to become teachers and be right back here, unfortunately, working for Mr. Hansen.
Speaking of Mr. Hansen, he's got a beautiful campus here. You mentioned free and uniform education. Have we done enough to help some of the smaller rural communities have facilities like this?
You probably circumvented my 2 staff with me that want to know why I wasn't talking about facilities. But thank you. You know, prior to this year, we required the patrons of this school district to do the hard work. And how many times they run the bond for it passed, Lance?
We failed 3 times, passed on.
3 times. Well, I know districts where it's even worse than that. But the community got behind this and funded it. I put this year $1.5 billion into a fund that's going to be available for either modernization or new buildings. This district is going to get a little over $19 million that's going to be available over 10 years to whether it's maintenance, whether it's a new school, whether it's writing down bonds, fill in the blank. The state never put money into facilities before, and now we are, but a lot of that's just because of the inflation. I'll bet this high school, if you were going to build it today, would probably cost 25 or 30% more if you were going to build it today.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at 60 million, we're looking more like 80.
I know high schools about this size that are looking at 100 million. So we are putting money, and that's a big deal. Yes, sir.
Was there anything that didn't pass that you wanted to see that maybe becomes a priority for the next time around?
Yes. I tell everybody, I guess press conference is over.
Yeah, this is last time.
That probably my biggest issue was I wanted more money available to districts for counselors, for both career counselors and for traditional counselors. But as I say about my Idaho Works plan, and a lot of states and the federal government are totally different. I got like 99% of all my proposals through. It may not have looked like it from afar. It didn't even look like it for me sitting in the governor's desk. But when we looked at everything I proposed at the State of the State, what we got, I was so laser focused on funding for launch that if somebody said, well, this one, I just stay focused on launch. I want to get this through. I've got 14,000 kids that raised their hands, said they were interested. The workforce was interested. Schools were interested. And so that was viewed by many in the legislature as a hostage. They said, Brad wants this. We'll push some of these other things to the back burner. But I was very thankful that we got it. And in fact, the legislators in this district were very helpful.
One thing that didn't get done is a health exception to the abortion law. I don't know if you talked about that with the students, but is that something?
When that legislation passed, and part of it was that legislation passing, and part of it was the implementation of the trigger law, the main sponsors of it, and the issue is, rape, incest, and the life of the mother, and how do you define life? There's major judicial reviews of that legislation, and the sponsors of the legislation says, let's wait and see what happens with these judicial reviews. The EMTALA case that's taken place right now that was presented to the Supreme Court last week, that's going to be one of them, and there's probably going to be some other ones. I don't believe that they committed to, after they saw the results of the litigation and the judicial reviews, that then they'd look at it. So you're right, they didn't do anything, but that was what I think sincere legislators stated they were going to do. So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
We have time for one more question.
All right.
Anybody else? I've been hogging it, but I'm happy to ask another one.
The fish dams.
Well, I'll stay off the fish dams for now. How about University of Phoenix? Where do you see that? Should that proceed?
Well, it was unfortunate that, well, part of the problem is when you're negotiating with a very, very, very sophisticated buyer, they require you to do that with a basically a secrecy cloud around it. And so what, in an ideal world, all the legislators and everybody, the public and the media would have known about it. But when you've got multiple buyers, they basically have a non-disclosure agreement. obviously nothing's going to get done this year. I think Apollo is still interested in maybe something happening. We'll see what happens, but we've got to do them. The University of Idaho has to do a much better job of outreach to elevate the comfort level. But I will tell you that the net of what, if everything went well, would have been more affordable, more accessible in rural Idaho delivery of education. And the state board, the legislature, and I have all asked our institutions to work on that. How this works into that, we will see. But the net of what the University of Idaho and the Board of Regents were trying to do was to have a better platform for online delivery, and the University of Phoenix is one of the best platforms there is. But we've got to have a much higher comfort level before this can ever go forward.
Governor, do you have any closing remarks, highlights from the session that you wanted to reiterate?
Well, I just do think that the biggest issue was the fact that now we're going to help school districts with facilities, that these students are going to have a much better opportunity. We've got a lot of implementation to do. You know, Cynthia's going to have more capacity here at LC. We're going to have more capacity from one end of the state to the other to educate nurses, and particularly in the career technical area, which just about a quarter of a mile from here, there's an incredible facility. I can't think of anything that's going to bend the trajectory upward for the quality of life in Idaho than having more kids, having better opportunities to go on, particularly in the career technical area, because, you know, Lewiston is a career technical community. The pulp mill, the sawmill, Schweitzer, everybody in the rec tech industry. It is a huge part of this community, and they will be inordinately rewarded for more skills coming to the workforce here in Lewiston. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.